this problem at work where people are not being fair. Come into this anxiety that I am dealing with. What is more powerful than God taking you out is when God comes in and starts to change things. He comes in and gives you favor despite who is trying to bring you down. He comes in and gives you grace that you cannot explain, grace to overcome what should stop you. In Isaiah 43 verse 2, he assures us that he will be with us when you invite him in. In that verse it says, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze." So if you are focused only on God taking you out, then you will be disappointed, because God does not work on our schedule. As it says in Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens." Sometimes it takes longer than we thought, but when you ask God to come in, you can relax. God, I know you are right here with me. You are ordering my steps, and at the right time, you will take me where I am supposed to be. You don't have to fight against everything, live upset, unable to sleep at night. That happens when you are focused only on getting out. God is waiting to come in. When you invite him, you are saying, "God, don't just change the circumstances, change me. Help me not just to go through this situation, but to grow through it." As it says in Romans 5 verses 3-4, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. So, my God, help me to learn, increase my faith, let my character rise." If God delivered us from everything instantly, we would never reach our full potential. God works in problems. He works in uncomfortable situations, and sometimes God is not taking you out yet, because he wants the odds to be more against you. So when he takes you out, it will be a greater miracle. In Psalm 23 verse 4 it says, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." Now voices will whisper, God doesn't even hear your prayers. That's why nothing is changing. God is preparing to show himself in your life. When he takes you out, no one will be able to deny that his favor is upon you. Lewis tells us in The Problem of Pain, "I now know, Lord, why you sometimes seem to shut all the doors in front of us. It is so that we turn to you alone. As long as we lean on anything that is not you, you must destroy those supports. If you are still hard on us, it is only to make our happiness more complete." God said in Isaiah, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned." It's interesting that God did not say he would keep you out of all the fires. You won't have to face any floods. No, he said, challenges will come. There will be adversities and things we do not understand. But the key to this verse is when he said, "I will be with you in the fire, in the flood, in the famine." Are you trying to get out of something that God is going to take you through? Are you fighting the process? It's not fair, God. I can't take it anymore. Everything will change if you start inviting God into the fire. He has already promised that he will be with you. Maybe he is just waiting for your invitation. The right attitude is, "God, I know you will get me out, but in the meantime, I am asking you to come into this challenge in my health. Come into this loss that I am going through. Come into this depression that is trying to stop me." When you invite God into your difficulty, You will feel him breathing in your direction, empowering you, enabling you, favoring you. Lewis once again tells us in his book, A Grief Observed, God is not a magic agent. He cannot simply be invoked to serve our human wills, but in our most difficult moments, he is there, not to immediately relieve us from pain, but to provide us with an inexplicable strength that only reveals itself in the presence of suffering. Is it a greater testimony that God kept you out of the fire, or that he came with you into the fire and brought you through it? David said that, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Why? Because you are with me. When you know that God is with you, when you have invited him into your situation, you will have a smile in the midst of difficulty. You will have a song of praise in the prison, like Paul and Silas. You will not be complaining about the problem, worried about when it will be solved. You will be at peace in the midst of the storm. The reason David did not live in fear, even while going through valleys and all kinds of adversities, is because he understood this principle of inviting God into the problem. He was not just waiting to get out. He knew that God was right there with him. If you are only praying, "God, get me out of here," you will be discouraged until it changes. "Joel, I can't enjoy my life. I have a child who is off course. I am dealing with an illness. My finances are low." When this changes, they don't have a good attitude. You are waiting for God to take you out, while God is waiting for you to invite him in. You have to do like David. "Father, thank you, because you are with me right here in this valley. I will not live in fear, worried. I may not see a way out, but I know you have a way out." Lewis tells us in his book, Mere Christianity, if you want to get warm, you must stand near the fire. If you want to get wet, you must get into the water. If you want joy, power, peace, eternal life, you must get close to, or even into, the thing that has them. They are not a sort of prize which God could, if he chose, just hand out to anyone. They are a great fountain of energy and beauty spurting up at the very center of reality. If you are close to it, the spray will wet you. If you are not, you will remain dry. Instead of just trying to get out of the valley, out of the problem, out of the fire, if you start to say, "God, come in. Let me feel your presence in the fire. Show me your greatness in this problem," only then will you have a peace that surpasses understanding, a joy when you could be downcast, a hope when you should be discouraged. In the scripture, 3 Hebrew teenagers would not bow to the king's golden idol. The king was so furious that he threatened to throw them into a blazing furnace. The teenagers said, "King, we are not worried. We know our God will deliver us." This made the king even more angry. He ordered the guards to heat the furnace 7 times hotter than usual. Why did God make the king heat the fire even hotter? He wanted it to be a great miracle. And so in Daniel 3, verses 24, 25, it says, "Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisers, 'Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?' They replied, 'Certainly, your majesty.' He said, 'Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods.' He wanted the odds to be more against them. The fact is, God could have kept them out of the fire. He is God. He parted the Red Sea. He opened the eyes of the blind. It would not have been a problem for God to change the king's mind or help those teenagers escape. But God does not deliver us from all fires. Sometimes he will take you through the fire. The good news is that God knows how to make you fireproof. People do not determine your destiny. Bad breaks cannot stop God's plan for your life. Addictions, unfair situations do not have the final say. Now, do not be discouraged because God did not keep you out of the fire. God does not prevent all negative situations. He uses adversities to move us towards our purpose. As it says in James 1 verse 2-4, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." We would never know his power if we were never thrown into a fire, so to speak. You would not know that he is a healer if you never had an illness. We would not know that he can move mountains if we never faced great obstacles. Now stop complaining about what you are facing. It is not a surprise to God. The enemy may have turned up the fire 7 times, hotter than normal. They did not do this without God's permission. God is in control, not only of your life. He is in control of your enemies. Instead of complaining about the fire, start inviting him into the fire. When he is with you, you cannot be defeated. You and God are the majority. He is a supernatural God. Floods, famines, what should bring you down cannot stop your destiny. Instead of complaining about everything you don't like, if you recognize that God allowed the difficulty, I'm not saying he sent it, but he allowed it because he had a purpose. As it says in Romans 8, verse 28, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. The purpose is not for you to live miserable, worried, and afraid. His purpose is to show his glory through you. It's so that other people can see his power and favor in your life. Without great tests, you won't have a great testimony. Without great battles, we won't see great victories. These teenagers said, "We know our God will deliver us." They made that declaration of faith. Then they said something even more powerful. "But even if he doesn't, we still won't bow." That's the kind of person that gives the enemy a nervous breakdown. When you can say, "God, this is what I am believing for. This is what I hope will happen. But God, even if it doesn't happen my way, I will still praise you. I will still be good to others. I will still show up on Sunday and serve. I will still pursue my dreams." That attitude gets God's attention. You are saying, "God, not my will, but let your will be done." But too often we are putting conditions on God and conditions on our prayer. God, I will be happy if my boss moves to the dark side of Mars. When you get him out of my life, then I will have a good attitude. Have you ever thought God might be using that person to do a work in you, to make you grow, to develop your character, to teach you to love those who are not very lovable? Instead of praying, "God, get me out of this situation," I am asking you to start praying, "God, come into this situation. Help me to have a good attitude. Help me to do the right thing when the wrong thing is happening." It's very powerful when you can say, "If he never moves, if he is here until I go to heaven, I know you have given me the strength to overcome, the power to be happy in the midst of this difficulty, and I will not let this person, this illness, this injustice steal my joy." Now you are growing. Now you are rising higher. Because sometimes God is waiting for us to pass the test before he takes us out. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. James 1 verse 12. The king ordered the guards to bind the teenagers' hands and feet with ropes. They threw them into the furnace. It was so hot that the guards were instantly killed. It looked like this was the end for the teenagers, but people do not have the final say. If it is not your time to go, you will not go. Nothing can take you out of God's hands. In a short time, the king came to check on them. He looked through the window of the furnace and was confused. He said, "Didn't we throw 3 men bound up? I see 4 men loose, and one looks like the Son of God. God may not keep you out of every fire, but don't worry. He will come into the fire with you. He will help you overcome what seems impossible. That illness should have been the end. The medical report said you were done, but like with my mother, God came into the fire with you, and here you are still going strong. That person you lost, or that person who left, broke your heart. That should have soured your life, but look at you now, still moving forward, doing great things, fulfilling your purpose. How can that be? God came into the fire with you." The psalmist said, "God is a very present help in trouble." We know that God is always with us, but when you are in difficulties and invite him, you will feel his presence in a greater way. You will be more aware that you are not alone. When you are thrown into the fire, so to speak, you will not become bitter. You will remain in faith, knowing that the 4th man is right there with you. The God who controls the fire, the God who heals, who restores, who rewards you for injustice is right there watching over you, protecting you, ordering your steps. Moses went through a difficult situation. He didn't know how it was going to work out. I'm sure he was tempted to worry and think about how big his enemies were. But God said to him in Exodus 33, "Moses, I will go with you. I will give you rest. Everything will be fine for you." Maybe you are facing some challenges. Life hasn't turned out the way you thought. You asked God to keep you out of the fire, but it didn't happen your way. Now you are wondering how you are going to overcome the illness, how your family will be restored. God is telling you what he told Moses. I am going with you. You are not in that fire alone. I have you in the palm of my hand. I am fighting your battles. That obstacle may be too much for you, but it is not too much for our God. Right now, he is pushing back the forces of darkness. He is preventing the fire from burning you. He is not letting those waters drown you. He is your protector, your deliverer, your provider, your healer. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to figure everything out. You won't know all the details. You have to walk by faith and not by sight, knowing that he is right there with you, that he promised everything will be fine for you. When the king ordered the teenagers' hands and feet to be bound, they could have panicked, but they understood this principle that God does not keep us out of every fire, but he comes into the fire with us. They didn't fall apart. They remained at peace. For in Philippians 4, verses 6, 7, it says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." But I can imagine how this outcome could have been different if they had complained, become bitter, discouraged. Maybe we wouldn't be talking about them. Maybe the 4th man would never have appeared. How we approach our difficulties makes all the difference. Are we going to go through them without being burned, without the smell of smoke, like the teenagers? Or are we going to get stuck in them and miss out on God's best? You might be in the fire right now, but this is not the time to complain. It's not the time to just pray, "God, get me out of here." More than ever, you need to start saying, "Father, thank you that you are in this fire with me. Thank you that no weapon formed against me will prosper. I am at peace. I am not going to worry. I trust in you." Lewis tells us in letters to Malcolm, chiefly on prayer, To you I am ceaselessly trying to explain the reasons for suffering, not as a means of condemnation, but of redemption. Our pain here is necessary for our future joy. That is why, when we pray, we are not just asking for things, but we are asking to become the kinds of people who can receive those things. I believe in what you promised, that everything will be fine for me. Look at how amazing God is. The king said, "Didn't we throw 3 men bound? I see 4 men loose." When the teenagers came out, the only thing the fire burned was the ropes that were holding them. Their hair was fine, their skin was fine, their clothes were fine, just the ropes. When you come out of this difficulty, the only things that will be gone are the limitations that were holding you back. The fire will burn off the fear, burn off negative mindsets, burn off relationships that were pulling you down. You will come out free, confident, healthy, promoted, victorious, ready to fulfill your destiny. There was an executive in a giant corporation. In the hallways of the company, whispers and envious glances surrounded him. His exceptional skill and confidence intimidated his colleagues. They conspired in the shadows, plotting ways to keep him under control. The executive, on the other hand, was fighting an internal battle. Sleepless nights and worries gnawed at his mind. He sought answers, hoping that God would intervene and change his destiny. The pressure extended to his marriage, and the stress began to take a physical toll on him. One day, during his prayers, something changed. He no longer pleaded, "God, get me out of this place." Instead, he cried, "God, be with me in this difficulty. Give me the grace to thrive where I am planted, regardless of the fairness. Show me your favor despite those who try to bring me down." Remembering Isaiah 41 verse 10, he found strength. "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." With this new perspective, the executive faced the fire with courage. He did not expect God to remove him, but rather to strengthen him right there. Years later, when the company was sold, he remained the only executive retained. Now he led the organization with confidence, knowing that God was by his side. The secret: he not only passed the test, but shone in the fire. He invited God into the difficulty, and his attitude changed everything. Even when others did not recognize his effort, he remained steadfast, aligned with the divine will. Therefore, when you face challenges, remember, the Creator of the universe is by your side. Invite him into the fire, and you will find supernatural strength to do what you never thought possible. That's what happened to Joseph in the scriptures. As a teenager, his brothers sold him into slavery. He worked for a high-ranking military officer in Egypt named Potiphar. Joseph, in a sense, had every right to be bitter and angry. His dreams were shattered. He was in a foreign country. He didn't know anyone. But you never read that Joseph complained. He just kept being the best where he was. He was so exceptional that Potiphar put him in charge of his entire household. Genesis 39 says that the Lord was with Joseph, and he was successful in everything he did. Joseph did what I'm asking us to do. He didn't just pray, "God, get me out of this problem and I'll have a good attitude." He said, "God, come into this problem. Help me to shine. Help me to stand out." The next verse says that Potiphar saw that the Lord was with Joseph. Can people see that God is with you in the fire? Are you being your best even when it's unfair? Are you shining when you could be complaining? Lewis tells us in his book, "A grief observed, I know the experience of suffering is profound and inexplicable. It seems unjust and meaningless. But it is in the furnace of pain that we discover God's presence in a more intense way. He does not abandon us. Rather, he is more present than ever, molding us, strengthening us, and preparing us for what is to come. Later on, Joseph was falsely accused and placed in prison for something he didn't do. Verse 21 says, "But the Lord was with Joseph there too." In prison, in betrayal, in injustice. It's significant that the scriptures tell us 3 times in just a few verses apart that the Lord was with Joseph. We understand it the first time. But God wanted us to see this principle that when you invite him into the fire, you will have favor that pushes you up when life tries to push you down, a strength to stand out when you could be sitting back, a power to overcome what should stop you. After 13 years of being in the fire, God took Joseph out and made him second in command in Egypt. You may be in a situation now that you don't think will change, but what God started in your life, he will finish. Now, it may not happen on your schedule. Instead of just praying, "God, get me out of here," being frustrated because it's taking longer than you thought, why don't you start inviting God? Father, thank you that you are with me in this battle against cancer. You are with me in this struggle against addiction. You are with me in this divorce, in this separation. When you invite God, you will feel his presence in a new way. Lewis tells us, in Surprised by Joy, what matters is not that all things happen according to our plans, but that we are confident that God is in control. He is present in every detail of our lives, even in the most difficult situations, and it is through these experiences that he reveals his glory and leads us to our true purpose. In Mark chapter 4, Jesus said to the disciples, "Let's go over to the other side of the lake." They all got into the boat, but while they were sailing, a great storm arose. The waves were crashing against the boat. The wind was so strong. The disciples began to panic, thinking they were about to die. Jesus was sleeping in the back of the boat. They ran as fast as they could. "Jesus, wake up. Don't you care that we are about to die?" Jesus got up and spoke to the storm. Suddenly, everything calmed down. Now these disciples had seen Jesus perform great miracles, heal lepers, raise a boy from the dead. When Jesus said, "Let's go to the other side," you would think they would be confident, nothing to worry about. The Son of God is in our boat. He just said, "We're going over." But even though Jesus was with them, they still panicked. They didn't realize that the winds and the waves couldn't stop the God who created the winds and the waves. The creation couldn't stop the Creator. They had no reason to be afraid. The Son of God was in the storm with them. I wonder if you are doing like they did, worried about something, even though God is in your boat. He has already promised to restore health to you, that you would lend and not borrow, that you and your house would serve the Lord. Now the circumstances may look the opposite. The medical report is not good. Your loved ones are off course. It's easy to live worried, upset. But can I encourage you? The Most High God is in your boat. Those winds can't stop you. The sickness, the injustice, the people. They can't keep you from your destiny. You might as well relax. Everything will be fine for you. Sure, the waves may be big, but you have an advantage. The God who controls the universe is right there with you. As it says in Now Do Your Part, start thanking him for fighting your battles. Start shining where you are, being your best despite the difficulties. Don't wait until it changes. You have to invite him before he takes you out. And if you do this, I believe and declare like those teenagers, the fire will not burn you. You are about to see the fourth man appear. Unusual things are about to happen. unusual favor, unusual healings, unusual breakthroughs,